Mr. Percy, the first thing we always ask people to do is just say your name and then spell your name.
My name is Billups Percy. Billups Percy.
Thank you. And that, of course, is when somebody else has this tape, then there's a record if something happens to me and I didn't label it correctly or something. So you were raised in Greenville. Let's just start way back at the beginning. You were raised by your cousin in Greenville, right?
Well, yes, I born in Birmingham, and then when my father died, we moved to Athens, Georgia, where my mother's mother lived, and we stayed there about a year, and then moved to Greenville, I guess when I was 4 or 5 years old. So I was really raised in Greenville, yeah.
What was Greenville like back then?
Well, I love Greenville. I loved it. It was just a small, friendly town right on the river, and we lived in a wonderful neighborhood, and I've always liked Greenville. And I remember so well the public schools were so great. I went to, I guess in Greenville, when we moved there, I think I went into probably the 3rd or 4th grade, and then the public schools up to the 8th grade. Then I went off to Macaulay School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. But the public schools in Greenville were very impressive. And I just had a lot of friends there. And of course, my Uncle William Alexander Percy, was just a wonderful person to be around. He was the most notable person, I think, in Greenville, and the house was seemed to be filled with visitors almost all the time. People coming from all over the country, all over the world to see Uncle Will. And so it was a fascinating place to grow up in. Unfortunately, my mother, shortly after we moved there, was killed in an automobile accident. And so at that point, Uncle Will adopted my 2 brothers and myself, and he did a good job. And he was, I don't know how he did all the things he did. He was a practicing lawyer, and a good one. He and his father, who was a U.S. Senator, had a law firm, and he also was a wonderful musician. He played the piano all the time. He wrote poetry. I think he had 4 or 5 books of poetry published, and yet he had time to raise three boys, and nothing seemed to be beyond him. And I never. One of the things I remember the most was that I had gone off to the 9th grade, went off to prep school in Chattanooga, Tennessee, a school called Macaulay, very good school. And I had good friends there, and one of them and I had agreed to go to University of North Carolina, where both of my brothers went and graduated. And so we were going to be roommates and whatnot, and then but I found out to my I was shocked to find out that Uncle Will told me that I had been accepted at the U.S. Naval Academy. he foresaw things coming on, and so instead of going to University of North Carolina, and it was in 1942, I graduated. I went to the U.S. Naval Academy.
Yeah, then you graduated in 3 years, didn't you?
I'm trying to. Right, I went there in '39. Right, that's right, and graduated in '42.
That was the first time since the Civil War they graduated.
And that was they needed officers, and so.
Well, what was it like at the Naval Academy? I mean, there was a war in Europe and a war in Asia, and were you thinking, oh, America's gonna get involved in this war? Were you concerned about that at the Naval Academy?
Not particularly. I don't remember. I remember I really didn't like the Naval Academy very much. I didn't like the discipline, and frankly, I thought the academics were very poor, except for they had a very good math department. But I was delighted to get out of there in 3 years. In fact, that pleased me no end. And so I left in 1942, I guess it was, when I graduated a 3-year class and went right into World War II.
Because Pearl Harbor was bombed while you were
Right,
at the Naval Academy.
right. It was bombed in
41.
December '41, and then I graduated, and that's when the superintendent of the Naval Academy, I think the day Pearl Harbor was bombed, called a meeting of the whole student body and told us, my class, that we were graduating in June, and that was great news for me because I didn't like the Naval Academy.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I entered World War II.
That's when you went directly to the PT boat, isn't it?
Right.
So, that's called for patrol torpedoes, what I read, and they were like little boats, huh?
Yeah, they were about 80 feet, I think, and very, very expensive, and each carried 4 torpedoes, and the reason before we graduated from the academy, we each of the seniors submitted their 3 preferences for the duty they wanted, and they would be granted according to where they stood in their class academically. And I put number 1 PT boats because they were very well known then, because General MacArthur had been saved by a PT boat in the Philippine Islands by William Buckley, and so I ended up with PT boats, and went to the PT school. I think it was Melville, Rhode Island, I believe, and then served in PTs.
So, did you live on the PT boat, or did you live at a base?
No, we lived on a base.
Okay.
Right.
But I read somewhere that they didn't have all the refrigeration and cooking, and that you had to do fishing and you know.
Right. Well, I remember my main complaint about when I left Pete, it was never anything to eat. All I remember was Spam, some junk in a can, and I remember when I was in PTs in the Solomon Islands, the whole year of 1943, I guess it was. Moving right up from Guadalcanal and Tulagi right up to Bougainville, and I remember, I think when a picture of me somewhere that showed me, I guess, after I came back, and I was 6 feet tall, weighed 99 pounds.
My goodness, you weren't eating much.
No, it wasn't anything to eat.
So
but
the Solomon Islands was a pretty long campaign, wasn't it?
well, we were there a year, and we were there for most of the campaign. When the Solomon Islands were very important to the Japanese because I think they were had their eyes on Australia, and in order to attack Australia, they had to get to Solomon Islands, and therefore we served in the Solomon Islands for that year, and I guess we were fairly successful, and really, well, the PT boats and the rest of the Navy and the Marine Corps all managed to defeat the Japanese in the Solomon Islands, which dashed any thought they had of attacking Australia if they had any. And so I was there from that year, starting out in Tulagi and going all the way up to Bougainville, and when my time was up, I forget exactly why, but so I went back to the States.
Well, I got a couple questions for you, though.
Yeah.
I wondered about this other naval officer that was also serving on a PT boat. You said JFK. You wrote about. He was a friend of yours.
Yeah, we were.
Excuse me, I can hear her.
Okay.
Mr. Percy, would it be okay if I put her out?
Oh yes, oh
I don't
yes.
mean to be rude.
Right.
Thank you. Mr. Percy.
Right.
Just
Okay,
for a
if it
moment.
starts again, we'll start again and take care of it.
We are speeding.
So you were friends with John Kennedy, Jack Kennedy.
Yes. Right. And I left an article out there that I wrote about my friendship with him, which was published in a wonderful magazine. It's not published anymore, called Double Take. But anyway, I think everybody liked Jack, and I got to know him, and I sometimes in the PT boats, we would normally go out every other night, and if your boat wasn't ready or something or other, you could either stay in or go out on somebody else's boat. Well, I went out. I figured I ought to go out, so I went out a lot on Jack's boat and got to know him that way. And I was actually out on patrol the night his boat was run into by a destroyer, and he very courageously was able to get the survivors to a nearby island where there were some friendly natives, and they were finally came back to the base. No, as I stated in that article, one of the reasons Jack was so popular was that he was the leading authority on everybody's favorite subject, the opposite sex. There was no question about it. And so that's what Jack, he loved to talk about, and we loved to listen. After the war was over, when I went to Virginia Law School, he was elected to the Congress, and he came down to Virginia to make a talk, and he was quite well known then. He was very popular congressman, and I forget what year this was when I was
So you stayed in touch with him, though.
but he not really. He I remember he was walking down the aisle after his speech, and all of a sudden he says, I can hear him now, "Percy, is that you? What the hell are you doing here?" I said, so I got up and walked out with him, and I said, "Good to see you, Jack." And I said, "I'm going to law school." He said, "Oh, what are you going to do when you graduate?" I said, "Well, I guess I'll practice law. I guess my family would. I said, "The first here's what you do. When you finish up here, you go to Washington, and you get into politics. There's nothing in the world like it." And we shook hands, and I never saw him. Never saw Jack again. When he was running for president, I received a call in New Orleans from the head of the Democratic committee, I think, saying that he was senator then, Kennedy was coming to New Orleans to make a speech, an important campaign speech, and they wanted me to introduce him. And I said, "Would you give me a day or two to think this over?" Then I called back and I said, "I'm sorry. I'm a registered Republican, and simply I have a high opinion of Senator Kennedy, but I cannot introduce him."
That's sad. So the PT boats were called the Mosquito Fleet, right?
Mosquito boats. Yeah, they did call them mosquito boats. I'd forgotten that, really.
Because that was why? Because they could just move quickly and kind of sting at night, or what?
I'm not sure why.
You went out at night, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. We would go out at sunset and come back at dawn. Mm-hmm. And I had the first boat I was on, I was executive officer. And after our first patrol, we came back in. We'd run into some gunfire, but nothing big time. And the captain of the boat, the PT boat had two officers, captain and exec, and about 9 enlisted men. And this captain, I noticed he didn't acted strange, and when he left the boat, he never set foot on the boat again. So the next day I was called in by the squadron commander and said, "Percy, you're the captain of the boat." I said, "Thanks a lot." But some people don't like to get fired at, you know, and I never knew what happened to him. Whether he was court-martialed or not, I do not know, but I took over the boat. And it always reminded me of, and I knew another officer who shot himself in the foot so that he wouldn't have to go out on patrol. And it always reminded me of a great remark by the man I probably would put as my number one hero of the 20th century, and that's Winston Churchill. I just had the greatest respect for Churchill, one of Churchill's remarks was, the greatest thrill that a person can have is to be shot at and missed. And I knew exactly what he meant. And and for some reason or other, I found risk to be exciting. Some people didn't. I'm not saying I wasn't scared to be shot at, but it was thrilling. It was, and I always figured, what's the worst that can happen is you die for your country. What better way is it to go than that? So I loved the time I was in the service during World War II. I really enjoyed World War II.
Well, you must have been shot at and obviously missed because you're here now. But anyway, you have a Silver Star of Valor, and you earned that on the PT boat.
Yes, and I'm not sure that I knew I'd been put up for the Silver Star, but when I came back from PT boats, I never wanted, I made it clear to the Navy, I never wanted to I didn't want to go back and be a PT boat instructor, and that's when I got into submarine school. In those days, you could do things like this. I made a phone call to a friend of mine who worked in the Navy Department, and told him that I wanted out of PT boats and I'd like to get in submarines. I'd never been on one, but I talked to people who had, and so he cut my orders, and I got orders to go to 30 days leave. This was, I guess, in early '74, not 54, 44, yeah. And went to New London, Connecticut, to the submarine school, and just as things work out, while there as a student at the submarine school, I was officially given my Silver Star Medal, which I had earned. And of course, that's quite a thrill for a student, and it made quite a hit, with the professors and to get that Silver Star while I was so.
So, was it just because you'd been the captain of the boat, or was it a specific battle, or?
No, there was nothing specific except that I'd been courageous and brave and fearless and this, that, and the other, sort of general type of language, not naming any specific thing. And I felt that if I deserved it, and I thought, well, I did deserve it, it was because I was in the Solomon Islands for a year. And we, generally speaking, we went out on patrol every other night. And I only missed one patrol for being ill. And I thought that perhaps that was a...
Can we stop for a minute? And
Speed.
Okay, well, you were just saying you went out every night, but did you engage the Japanese? I mean, weren't they trying to run resupply through the slot?
Yes, but I never fired a torpedo. Mostly involved in gun. We had a lot of guns. We had two sets of 50 caliber guns and two other big guns, one forward, one aft, and so. Most of the action, as they say, that's the key word in the service, is action, combat, and most of it involved exchanging gunfire with barges which were moving Japanese soldiers from one place to another, and apparently we were, along with the rest of the fleet was successful in getting the Japanese to move all the way up from Tulagi all the way up to Bougainville, and finally we got them out of the Solomon Islands altogether. And so the PT boat certainly got some of the credit for that, because there was a lot of gunfire, and we never get hit, but.
And you never had to engage a destroyer or anything like that.
No.
Not. That's when you got on the Sea Robin. Was when you started attacking destroyers,
Right.
wasn't it?
Right.
So
But,
you were there for the Sea Robin when it was commissioned? Were you there when it was commissioned?
Oh yes. When I came back from my service in PT boats, I might mention one thing. It's not funny, but it's right after I'd become boat captain, when they kicked this other fellow off, this friend of mine asked me if he could use my boat. They had to go out on patrol that night. I said, sure. So they left on patrol, and they'd been gone about an hour, and they were bombed. A Japanese plane bombed them and sank the boat.
Your boat?
My boat. And so they lost, I think they may have lost one or two people, but it was right close. They had just left our base. But the boat was sunk, and everything I had was on the boat. So I spent, I don't know how I got by. I didn't have much underwear or anything else, because all my clothes and everything were on the boat. So I got another boat, and but I found it really sort of comforting to finally get into submarines, where things were more, I thought, better balanced, and I loved submarine duty. Absolutely loved it. And I was.
Edie, I'm sorry, but at the beginning of the statement, I had a truck trailing off. I don't know if you just
Well, we'll start. Thanks. We'll
repeat
start
that again.
So
'cause
you
that was a
said
good line.
you love submarine duty?
Yes.
You want to tell me again how much you loved it?
Yes, I remember what, in order to be admitted to submarine school, I had to deal with a psychiatrist. And he was very serious, and earphones and whatnot, and he wanted to know, why do you want to get in submarines? I found out the problem is a lot of people were something where you hate claustrophobia. A lot of people. Anyway, he said, "Why do you want to be in submarines?" I said, "Well, first I want action. I want action. I understand in submarines there's plenty of action. And what I don't want is to come back from the war with one arm or one leg or something else. I want to come back in one piece or not at all." And as I understand it, in submarines, that's the way it works. And he liked that. So I got through that and got in submarines, and I loved every minute of it. And the captain, I made 3 war patrols on the submarine. Each war patrol was about anywhere from 60 to 90 days, and they were all successful war patrols in so-called Japanese held waters, Japanese combat waters.
Right. The first one, it sounds like the first patrol, you were out right around Christmas of 1944. and you, it sounds like there was a rogue wave and you lost a crew member overboard. That was actually the first real incident. You were south of Midway about that time, is what I read on. I had the ship's log, actually.
I'm not.
You don't remember the...
I don't.
But it says that you had your first contact with the enemy 2 days after Christmas. And that right after the first of the year, on January 6th, 1945, that you sank a 4,000-ton... It says AK. It must have been some sort of
Yeah.
Japanese.
Right. But I don't remember those those details really. I just.
So how did you
I just
approach a ship when you were going to attack? How did you approach a ship? Were you at periscope depth, or you weren't down? Were you way down because you couldn't see? Did you? How did you approach a ship? How did you know?
I think we made virtually all of our attacks submerged, I believe. Possibly at night. I think maybe we made an attack or two on the surface, but basically we did our attacking would be done in the daylight, and when we were submerged, and my job on the second and third patrol was a diving officer, which was I think a pretty important job. I might mention on the first patrol, I was the commissary. I was a commissary officer, and also the engineering officer. And the commissary officer, my job was to figure out the food to buy for the patrol. And patrol being 60, 70, 80 days, and all I remember was, and I turned out to be right, I think everybody liked steaks. So we had steaks for breakfast, and my other job on that first patrol, I just out of PT boat through submarine school and brand new on submarine, and captain wanted me to be engineering officer. And I said, Captain, the captain I respected and admired more than anyone that I've ever known who's not in my own family. And he was the captain for all three patrols.
So you must have had some refrigeration on the ship, too.
I said, Captain, you want me to be engineering officer? Captain, I didn't do too well at Annapolis in engineering. I did very poorly. I never have been good with machines. And he said, Perce. I was known generally in the Navy as Perce. I mean, they couldn't deal with Billups Percy or anything. He said, Perce, here's what you do. If something goes wrong with the engine, we had 4 diesel engines. If something goes wrong with the engine, you go talk to the engineering officer, the engineering mate, the enlisted man in charge of the engine room. You talk to him, and then you come back and talk to me. And I said, oh, well, we can do, yeah, that'll work. So I was go back and forth. Now I was also in charge of the batteries. And the submarine was loaded, of course, with batteries. It was my job to see that the batteries were watered and kept in. But what I liked so much at submarine was three war patrols, and I stayed on submarine until I got out of the Navy in '48, I guess. We got pay and a half, because of the danger. But I never knew anyone who was on a submarine for the money. And so it was the people, the officers and the enlisted men. And that's what I loved about the submarine.
You were just all in there really together, weren't you?
Yeah.
One team.
Yeah. Yeah.
My mom and dad took me to a World War submarine, which was at one of the museums in Chicago. And it must have been about the time Kennedy was president, actually, and we got to go in the submarine. Those aren't very big across.
Yeah.
You didn't mind that?
No. No, I love absolutely loved it.
So where did you sleep? Where do you sleep on a submarine?
We had bunks. There were, I think we only had 8 officers, and there were 2 staterooms with 4 bunks in each one, and the captain had his own cabin, and nobody ever went in there unless it was something extremely important.
And you had a mess hall?
Oh yes.
You really did?
Oh yes.
I must have been on a little submarine in Chicago.
Yeah. The officers had their own mess hall, and we had, unlike PT boats, we had excellent food, and we kept, I say regular hours. Usually, your watch would usually be 4 hours. It could be midnight to 4 in the morning, and then whenever. But just I think the main secret of our submarine was the captain. Everybody respected the captain so much, and I don't know how many ships we sank, but I think we did pretty well.
Well, I saw that in your 3 tours, you sank quite a few ships. So at the end of your second tour, you went to Pearl Harbor, right? At the end of your first tour, you went to Fremantle, Australia, didn't you?
I think Perth.
Perth.
I think
my dad was in Perth.
Really?
Yeah. He talked about having to go to the dentist. He had a toothache.
Yeah. We went to Perth for what you call R&R. After a submarine patrol, you got 2 weeks or so of R&R, rest and recreation, and then you begin getting ready for your next patrol. And we had 2 weeks, 2 wonderful weeks in Australia. They loved us, and we loved them. We had good parties and everything, and so we took off from there for our next patrol. And
so on your next patrol, I saw a note on the log that you were told to rig for depth charge attack. What would you do when you would rig for a depth charge attack?
Actually, wasn't much you could do except go down as deep as you could go.
Well, how deep could you go?
And sit on the bottom.
Wow.
And I remember one instance where it looked like we were going to be depth charged pretty good, and the captain said, Percy, he's up here, I'm down here as a diving officer. He said, Percy, take it at 400 feet. That's what our boats were tested for, 400 feet. And so it was going down, and we went down pretty fast because of these depth charges. And so I kind of lost control as a diving officer, and we ended up on the bottom at 500 feet. And it began leaking a little bit, and everybody was a little taken aback, and we were just nestled right on the bottom. And finally, I went in and I said, Captain, I'm sorry, I just kind of lost control going down. He said, Percy, what do you mean? Don't be sorry. We know we can go to 500 feet. That's the way he was. And so we stayed there for a while, and then we figured the main threat was it passed us by, and so he said, let's surface. Let's bring her up. So I was the officer in charge of yes, as a diving officer, I was also in charge of giving the orders to the enlisted men and what to do. So I said, blow the forward ballast tank. The way you raised the submarine was to you had all this power that you could blow the water out of the submarine, and we blew some of the water out, but we didn't move, and it appeared that we were stuck. And I think we all thought that was the end of it. And finally, the chief of the boat, I finally recommended him for a Silver Star. The chief of the boat, Hunter, he was down there with me around the auxiliary men, people trying to blow the water out. And he kept saying, you know, sometimes when you walk in the thick mud or rainy, whatever it is, and you kind of go like this when you're walking, lift your foot up a little at a time. Said, let's try to do that with the submarine. And so we began blowing a little forward and a little aft and a little middle, and pretty soon we got free. Otherwise, we'd still be there. And so we came back up, and that's.
So I remember movies like Run Silent, Run Deep, and stuff like that, and the silent running, and so when you were afraid of depth charges, you couldn't make any noise down there, could you?
You couldn't what? I'm sorry.
You couldn't make any noise. You had to be real quiet, didn't you?
Right. But we were very fortunate. We were depth charged very few times. Whether it was because our captain was clever or whatever it was, we were not really spotted by enemy destroyers or whatnot. The one time when it looked like we might be been spotted was, I think, the closest we came to not getting back was when we went into the Yellow Sea, and the Yellow Sea. This, I believe, was our last patrol, and the Yellow Sea reminds me somewhat of Lake Pontchartrain. It's shallow, about 150 feet, very calm, and it's just about the last place you'd want to be with your submarine. But we went in the Yellow Sea, and we spotted this Japanese anti-submarine vessel, and
I know. I can't do anything about it. Too bad.
I know you know.
Mm-hmm. That was just somebody's hammering something.
yeah.
You spotted an anti-submarine vessel.
Yeah, and I was a diving officer, and because we knew if we were detected, we'd never get out of there, and so we kept the periscope just barely, maybe 2 or 3 inches above the surface. And finally, the ship that we were after seemed to be kind of dead in the water. All of a sudden, the captain says, "Uh-oh, he's underway." And we probably thought, that's it. But he was underway in the other direction. So he went that way, and we came back out of the Yellow Sea. And had he spotted us, we never would have gotten out of there.
Well, you got quite a few destroyers, though, while you were touring as a submarine officer. There was one, wasn't there? One that was just a really spectacular explosion when you torpedoed the destroyer. And it was like fireworks or something. Everything sparked all over, and you could see it from miles around.
I can only vaguely remember that.
So did you take prisoners ever? Did you ever have prisoners aboard your submarine?
Yes, we done. I remember we did sink I guess a merchant ship or something, and picked up I think 3 or 4. I'm not even sure we knew they were in the naval service or not, but we picked them up and took them back to Pearl Harbor. And I remember when they left the boat, I'm confident they all thought they were going to be shot as soon as they stepped off, because that kind of thing happened in Japan to Americans. But anyway, they just kept them there in Pearl Harbor. I don't know where they are now, but so we did save. Again, I'm not even sure they were seamen, military seamen, or naval seamen, but
But when you would attack a destroyer and then some Japanese would survive the attack, would you pick them up, or did they just have to swim?
We didn't. That instance I just mentioned was the only time I remember picking up survivors.
How about Americans? Did you ever help rescue downed pilots or anything like that?
It seems to me once we did, but I can't.
So and you got a Bronze Star for your time on you got a Bronze Star of Valor again for your time on the submarine.
Yes, and I would like to. This was after the 3rd Patrol, and the captain called me into his quarters and said it had already been determined that he was going to get the Navy Cross, which is the highest Navy award except for the Congressional Medal of Honor. And when the captain received the Navy Cross, it meant he could make so many awards to the officers and enlisted men. And so let's just say that if he got the Navy Cross, he could recommend 3 Silver Stars out of 100. Submarine had about 100 people altogether. 3 Silver Stars and 5 Bronze Stars, let's say. And he called me into his cabin. He said, "Percy," he said, I'm ready to recommend you for Silver Star. He said, but I know you got one in PT boats, and maybe you'd be satisfied or happy with a Bronze Star, because you'd have, you know, different metal and different. Well, I'm very proud of my reaction to that. I don't think too many people got two Silver Stars in World War II, and I would, but I also knew that that if I didn't get the Silver Star, somebody else on the boat would get it. So I said, the Bronze Star is fine, Captain, and I was very proud of that. So
Well, you earned
I got the that picture you have of me getting the award. That was the Bronze Star.
Oh, okay. Well, you earned that. I mean, obviously, sitting on the bottom and being very quiet and hoping, like Churchill said, you got shot at and missed.
Yeah.
You know, that must have been plenty of action for you, and it must have been frightening.
I can't say I was never frightened, but there was something about risk that it was stimulating in a strange kind of way, and I always felt we'd get out of this, whatever it is. Sometimes I felt less encouraged than other times about getting out of it, but it was and I don't know what my career would have been like on another submarine. I admired this captain so much. And after the war was over, this would just be brief. We went back, and this was right after this patrol where the captain had awarded me the Bronze Star, and after the war was over, we ended up being based in Panama, and it was big. We had a big naval base down in Panama, and so I served on the Sea Robin from the end of the war until I think it was about 1948, and I'll never forget. And I had a lot of war was over. The Panamanians were very nice to us. I played a lot of golf, but I told the captain, I told him I decided to resign from the Navy, and he said, Percy, you've got a good record, and you know, if you stayed in, I really think you'd have a good future. And I said, Captain, the game is over. And he knew exactly what I meant. And so he put me on the plane from Panama, flew up to Jacksonville, Florida, and resigned from the U.S. Navy.
And then you went to law school.
Yeah, I had to, right.
So I want to know what what it was like, because you were on the submarine, you were participating in the attack on Wake Island. You'd been over pretty close to Japan when you were in the Yellow Sea and when you were Wake Island. It's August 1945, and we're dropping A-bombs on Japan. And Japan, we won the war.
Yeah, well,
What was that like?
well, quite frankly, I think that we were very close to Hiroshima and Nagasaki when they dropped those bombs. After we'd come out of the Yellow Sea, we didn't hear the bombs or anything, but all of a sudden we heard on the radio, our radio, that had been dropped, and the next thing we hear on the radio is the war is over. So we were very close.
What happened on your ship when they said the war was over?
It was a mixture of reactions. I mostly, of course, we were delighted, but I think we all loved the submarine so much that we kind of thought we were going to miss not having another patrol. But generally speaking, we already knew then, right before this happened, we knew that submarine force was beautifully run in the Pacific. We knew then that our next patrol would be in the Sea of Japan, which between Japan and the mainland. And although it would obviously be quite dangerous, I mean, the ships and everything, it would be a field day. And so I think most of us kind of looked forward to that. And then we heard the war was over. That's the end of the Sea of Japan. and of course, looking back, we were all happy we didn't have to go to the Sea of Japan. I don't think we'd ever gotten out of there alive. Because the Sea of Japan, the area between Japan and the mainland, was full of mines, among other things. And so the war was over, and
well, you disarmed mines and everything too, didn't you? As on the submarine, if you found a mine, you would disarm it, wouldn't you? You would.
Oh yeah. But I don't have any vivid recollection of.
So I just had one or two more questions. Did you ever come back to Mississippi? Then after you resigned the Navy?
Yes.
To live?
That was 1948, what did I think? And I resigned from the Navy in Jacksonville, Florida, and came, I forget, I may have rented a car, bought a car, and went right to Greenville, Mississippi. To stay with my brother Leroy and his wife and family, and
what had changed?
And and my recollection is I'm pretty sure this is true, that after staying with Leroy and Sarah for a while, I had saved up a good bit of money. I mean, submarine pay was good. I hadn't spent a dime when I was, in the Navy, so I had a good bit of money. So I didn't even consult Brother Leroy. I went down to the and bought to the automobile place and bought a beautiful car. I've forgotten what kind it is, and got at it and headed for a place called Las Vegas. No, excuse me. I headed for the Grand Canyon. I'd always wanted to see the Grand Canyon. And so I'd forgotten what the car was, but it was a nice car. And so I, on my way to the Grand Canyon and enjoying every minute of it. And I remember getting near the Grand Canyon, I came up to a no pass area, and I was just lost. And so I got out to see just what was up, and just ahead of where it stopped, I was on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. And there was not a soul in sight, no tourists, and I think I spent about an hour just sitting there looking at the Grand Canyon and mulling over my life and whatnot.
That was about as opposite of a submarine as you could get, wasn't it? But you've been gone from Greenville for 9 years. Was Greenville pretty much the same?
But let me finish this one. After the Grand Canyon, I found it was time to leave. I had always liked gambling, and I had heard that there were only two places in the country where gambling was legal. One was in New Jersey, and one was in Nevada, in a place called Las Vegas. And I looked at my map, and Las Vegas was right next to the Grand Canyon. So I got in my car and drove to Las Vegas, and I stayed at a place called the Desert Inn. And Las Vegas was just a tiny little town on the desert. And so I stayed there for a few days and made a good bit of money and got in the car and drove back to Greenville, and then decided to go to law school.
So I'm just curious, once again, Greenville, you'd been gone 9 years. You came back. Was it pretty much the same sleepy Mississippi town, or had it changed?
Yeah, I didn't. The main change was not having Uncle Will around. I mean, that was in fact, that loss was. But no, Greenville I didn't detect anything. And I loved being with Roy and Sarah and their children, and meeting my old friends in Greenville, and I didn't see that Greenville had changed any for the worse. So I stayed there until I decided to go to law school.
And did America change while you were at sea?
America?
Yeah, had America changed?
I didn't detect any, really. It was people like to talk to me about the war. People that knew you'd been in the war, they loved it, and I enjoyed talking to them about it. But America, I think, I'll say that you really had the feeling, which I certainly had not had before, that there is no question that this is the greatest country in on this universe. I feel that today, but I think I really felt it for the first time right after World War II was over. The way we handled World War II, the way we handled Hitler, and with the help of Winston Churchill and the great personnel we had, Eisenhower and others, Bull Halsey, the admiral out of the Pacific that I admired so much, and but our performance in World War II was just, and President Roosevelt, I'd certainly give a great deal of credit.
Well, is there anything you'd like to tell us that I haven't asked you?
I think I've talked too much as it is.
Oh, I don't think you've talked too much. I think this has just been wonderful, and I just really, really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your